Well, hi to everybody and welcome to session 5 of the SALT Lunchbox. My name's Dave. I'm the founder of SALT Sport and Life Training. We're a not-for-profit health education company that normally presents in clubs and workplaces on a range of topics related to wellbeing and mental health, culture and leadership. Our goal for our Lunchbox series is to inspire and connect you, our audience. And to do that, we're introducing a new topic each day that we hope will help you to take some action, both for you and those who you love and care for. We're also hoping that you'll connect with each other during our webinar by telling us your story, responding to our prompts and asking questions where you want to. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see both the chat and the Q&A icons. And please use these throughout the webinar. And on the drop-down menu on the right-hand side, if you can click all panelists and attendees, that will mean that everybody can see what you're saying, and we find that really helpful. We'd love to know who you are and where you're from, so please take a moment to write in our chat. We love to look back over and see who's been. I'd like to express our deep appreciation to our sponsors, and Bendigo Bank and FC Business Solutions, for your generosity. So today's topic: in this time of confinement, many of us are going to be challenged in our relationships. And behaviours that you might normally overlook can get magnified when we're living in uncertainty. In addition, right now, we've had more time to kind of think about and reflect upon the things that are going on in our lives and where we're at. And you might have an issue with someone, and the issue keeps coming back to you. Perhaps it's eating away at you. It could be bringing out emotions in you like anger or anxiety or frustration. Or it might just be that you know someone who's acting poorly and you're seeing them hurt people around them, and it's really affecting you. And I expect that we can all think of an issue where we've had to approach somebody and talk about it. And I find that to be a very difficult thing to do. I must admit, I'm actually terrible at having those difficult conversations. I avoid them at all costs. And I think this has been to my own detriment. And about 5 years ago, I was interviewed on a local radio station. It didn't have a lot of bandwidth. It wasn't going to be listened to by many people. And I shared about my life growing up and the troubles that I'd had with my family. And I shared that when I was young, I was quite an angry young man, and that much of it stemmed to the breakup of my parents in the way that it was handled. And I shared this on the radio at the age of 53. But had never actually shared it with my own mother. Now, my mother lives in Queensland, so I never expected her to hear the interview. But anyway, somebody somehow sent a copy of the interview, and she rang me, and she was very upset because she didn't know that I'd always felt that way, because I'd never told her. And I was so embarrassed and ashamed that she'd had to hear this so many years later and in this kind of very public way. And I thought that she'd be angry with me. However, she wasn't, and to her great credit, she apologised and wrote me a heartfelt letter. And from then on, our relationship went from polite and kind of superficial to become much deeper and more genuine. And we went from speaking to each other about once a fortnight to probably now 2 or 3 times a week I ring and talk to my mum. And what a shame when I look back that I hadn't had this conversation with her face to face 30 years ago. Some of us avoid confrontation at all costs. But if we don't address it, there's a cost to pay in so many other ways. We talked about the price of emotional suppression in our session on emotional agility. So we do need to have some level of confrontation in our lives, but we need to learn the right way of managing it. And when we can do this well, relationships are restored and they can blossom because a major roadblock has been removed and respect and trust has been established. As difficult as it might be, I think we actually all respect someone who's on the level with us. It's a wonderful leadership skill, and it's a skill we all need. I guess the challenge is knowing when to do this and how to do it. We all know people who have no trouble at all with confrontation. They can leap into it aggressively and poorly. And we don't want to be like that either. So I reckon we need an expert to help us navigate this challenging aspect of life. And today we have with us special guest, Ian Morehouse. Ian was the CEO of the Southeast Asia division of Maya Homewares, and he has a long history in senior management working with global companies. Throughout his life, his heart has always been towards impacting culture and behaviours. Ian's also a dear friend of mine. He's a SALT presenter and is one of the nicest, gentlest, most humble people I know. I'll be embarrassing him now. So it seems a bit incongruous that you'd be talking to us today about how to have difficult conversations. You're with us, Ian. Come on board. Let's get him on. There
Hi, Dave.
Hiya. Tell me, how did you develop an interest and a level of expertise in this particular area?
Well, I guess I don't think you ever become an expert at it, Dave, but it's wonderful, and it's a great life skill, both at work or at home, to have a skill set in knowing how to have the conversation. As you said, I found myself in a senior management role with a global company, and all of a sudden surrounded with some big egos, and issues came my way thick and fast, and I had to work out a way of handling it, or otherwise I would have been buried. And at the same time, we had a lot of people hiring a lot of people in the organisation, and issues came through the office door every day. And I guess, like most of us, we're reasonably good at handling issues, and we find a way to do it. But some, you just know, are tough ones, and you hesitate and you take a few short steps. And so that's really started my interest in, I've got to find a better way to deal with these issues. And I guess after a number of years, here I am today talking about it.
All right, well, Ian, you can tell from my story that many of us are not very good at this. Yeah,
and that's true. And we all understand those butterflies, and people will never listen to us, and so it's difficult. But let me place it. So last year I was talking to a group of people, and we were just talking about this very issue, and I said to them, if a stranger walked into this room now and they had food on their face, how many of you would walk over and tell them? And about 30% put their hand up. And then I said, well, what about if it was a friend? Would you tell them then? And about another 30% put their hand up. And then I finally said to them, but what if it was you? What if it was you walking into the room with food on your face? Would you want someone to tell you? And of course, 100% put their hand up. And it's no different with our behaviours. We're all capable of behaving poorly and not seeing it. The filters aren't up, and we're not looking at ourselves in a mirror. And when people don't address that with you, that's when gossip starts in organisations, and it's damaging. And all we're looking for someone courageous enough, someone caring enough to put their hand on their shoulder and tell us, hey, you're acting poorly and you need to fix it. And we don't want anyone to talk about it anywhere else. We want them to come to us.
No, that's good. And from another perspective, I know that on the sporting field, there's times when it's your turn to go, to leave your man and attack the ball, or to put your body in harm's way, or to block the run of an opposition player. So on the field, we know we have to step up and do things that we don't want to for the good of the team. So I guess this is similar. It
is, Dave. And sometimes the neon sign is flashing to say it's your turn, and it's only you, and you look around and you want someone else to do it, but you know in your heart it's your turn. So there's 7 steps. I'm going to walk you through these 7 steps in how to prepare for this conversation. It's all in the preparation. And at the end of it, you really should be able to deliver this in less than a minute to get someone to the table to talk this issue through. And there's some really good material. You can Google, you go online, but the best I've found is a book called Fierce Conversations by Suzanne Scott. And I've worn out that book plenty of times preparing for a conversation. So I can highly recommend that. And we're going to use some of her material today. So the first step 1, is name the issue. And the issue is really, there it is there, up on screen. What is the issue? In 2 or 3 sentences. And you only have 2 or 3 sentences because you want to take the emotion out of the whole issue. So often, issues are a lot more complicated, and we have a lot of feelings and emotions and anger and frustration. There's some history around this, but we can't take that into the conversation. And again, when I've found the 2 or 3 sentences to say, sometimes I realise that it's not as big as it actually sounds, or I've had some part in it. But on the other hand, I've known after writing those words down that it is time to address this issue, and I know exactly what it is. Mm. So I'm going to use a topic now that's in the press and at the moment, and everyone I think will relate to it. It's about someone behaving poorly in this time of lockdown. So it's a partner saying to a husband, John, I need to talk to you about your behaviour in this time of lockdown. Now, John knows now what the conversation's about, and he shouldn't be confused, but maybe he is. So the second step here is to give some examples. Select a specific example too that illustrates the situation and behaviours you want to change. And it's not a long essay. Now, John might have been thinking when he heard that he should have been doing dishes last night or should have been putting the kids to bed. But that's not what the issue is about. It's a lot more serious. So here are the 2 examples. Yesterday, I had a phone call from one of the wives at the football club. And she said, you and some of the other players have been drinking behind closed doors. As well, you went to our next door neighbours, and there's a lot of people at that house, and you went inside the house and you stayed there for a long time talking and drinking coffee. So now he's completely understanding the seriousness of what you're talking about. Step 3. Step 3, describe your feelings around the issue. And of course, when we describe our feelings, we're getting some empathy here. It's not all about them. It's about us, and we want to reach out when someone's sharing their feelings. It's something honest about it. So she might say, I should say, whatever your feelings are. If it's anger, it's frustration, say it. Mm. It's so important at this part. Mm. So she might say, I'm losing sleep over this. I'm anxious. I'm getting tired of it. I'm really worrying. Mm. So now he's completely understanding the seriousness of the situation for the person speaking. Step 4, clarify why resolving the issue is important. So she might say something like this. I fear for your health when you do this, but also for our kids, for me, for our friends. But also when this whole time of isolation finishes, I fear you're going to have a reputation for really being inconsiderate and irresponsible. And that, most of all, is sitting hard on me. So now, again, it's really important at this stage to understand what the behaviour is if it continues. So step 5, identify my contribution to the problem. So in this case, so sometimes you didn't make any contribution and you don't have to worry about this step. But she might say something like this. I apologise. I should have said something to you last week when I was starting to feel anxious. We need to be on the same page, and we could have sat down and talked about this. I want to work this through with you. So step 6, indicate your wish to resolve it. This is important, really important at the moment, because in a work situation, I found that people think, well, this is a serious problem. It's going on now. And am I being fired? Am I being put in front of a firing squad? But no, she wants to resolve the issue, and now he knows that she does. So she might just say, I really want to resolve your behaviour and be on the same page. Step 7, invite the person to respond. Can we talk about this? Your time now is to be quiet and let them talk. and now you're in this conversation, but you're mainly asking questions for clarity, but you've just had your minute, and now they're feeling a bit freer about, well, you want to resolve it, and now hopefully they want to talk to you about the problem and actually come to a conclusion. And just as a heads up, a powerful question to ask when you do have this, when you resolve the issue, you've got a plan to go forward, ask this question. If I feel in a few days' time the same way as I feel now, what should I do about it? And this is really important because you're anxious. If the behaviour doesn't change and you're still upset, then you've got permission. Because most often people say, well, come and talk to me again about it. I actually had a time in a work situation where we went through this whole process, and I said to them, what should I do about it if it continues? And they turned around and said, sack me, which surprised me. but most people will just say, you know, come and talk to me about it. And that takes the pressure off you. Mm. So 60 seconds, David, succinctly, to the point, no emotions, no being upset, no tantrums here, and a great way to have a conversation.
Yeah, look, I think you're absolutely right. I think that a conversation goes so much better when it feels to the person receiving it like you haven't overstated, you've done your research, you haven't gone off and been overly emotional. I think they can tell the difference between a conversation like that and one that you do, you know, on the run. So I think that's terrific. And those 7 points, we'll put them up on our Facebook site, and people will be able to go back to those. And while you took a while to explain it all, the fact is that you could do that in 60 seconds, which is terrific. It's not too much to endure. I'm looking at some of the comments coming in, and there's some terrific ones, and great to have some of our regulars with us and some new people as well. And we've got one, I'm not sure who it's from, but it says, how do we deal with people that are really not aware of their behaviour and just can't see the issue? So if there's that resistance at the beginning to say, you know, I don't accept what you're telling me here.
Yeah, you know what, you can only plan it and you will be surprised. But, you know, it's more often than not, if you thought through that strategy, people do know. I've never come across a time where, in fact, it's opened up a whole new discussion because we are aware of ourselves. So very seldom, if at all, have I come across someone that doesn't know what I'm talking about. And maybe in the preparation, you've missed that point of what is the issue. Pretty much, if you do the homework, you do the right preparation, you'll probably nail the issue.
James says, having the difficult conversations with children around the current worldwide pandemic help them understand the facts rather than rumours about the virus. Parents should also check in with themselves and consider how their fears may be impacting their children. You know, having this open communication as a family. This is something that we will address in the next few weeks. We've got a number of terrific topics coming up as people are filling out the poll and sharing with us what they would like us to share. What about, Ian, when there's multiple issues? It's not just one. What do we do then?
Sure. And I think I said earlier, Dave, it usually is. So I would sit down and, as you do the planning, write the issues that come to mind. You might end up with 6, you might end up with 10, hopefully not 20. But then list the most important here. And usually it's the 80-20 rule. And you'll find that a lot of issues are meshed into the same one. And so if you get the biggest one first, just stick with that. Otherwise, the conversation will wander and go all over the place, one at a time.
Welcome, Edwina. And we're missing Lane today. So as we said, we're going to rotate the panel in the future. And we've got some terrific guests coming on, and we'll try to keep the gender balance where possible. So Ed, have you got anything to contribute in regard to these difficult conversations? Whoop, you're going to have to unmute yourself there, Ed.
Got it. I was going to add something, and then I saw that Annette Campbell, one of our listeners, said this really succinctly. Having a strategy and a plan is a positive process. And I think having a strategy and a plan takes us to a responding frame of mind rather than a reaction. And that gets us out of those emotions that perhaps get us saying the things that are hurtful rather than helpful. And I think this is an incredibly helpful process. So I know, Ian, that, you know, whether it be at home or at work or in any of our relationships, that to be able to tackle things from all of these viewpoints, I think is just fantastic. So I look forward to being able to use it and maybe report back.
There's another point to that, Ed, that I think when you get better at this skill, for managers and leaders out there, you could be the president of the football club, or you might be in a management position at work, or even for your friends around you, when you're actually honest and can have a conversation like this, the respect for those type of people prepared to go there just rises, and it's such a good skill to have as a leader.
Yeah, I think maybe adding to that is we often talk about trust in our workplaces, and I think with this comes incredible honesty, vulnerability, and I think that helps build trust. So I think, you know, we can all learn from this to say, well, let's not shy away from this. Now we've got a really good process. Let's try this out, because I think it could be a really key way to build trust in our families and in our workplaces.
There's been a number of people who've actually asked about how do you stay calm in regard to this, and I think that's really important. But I think the rehearsal in itself allows you to mentally rehearse in your own mind how you're going to do this. And I know that if I'm speaking at a funeral or something such as that, I don't want emotion to overcome me. So I actually go into the mode where I'm focusing on my delivery rather than the emotions that have, been there in the background to cause me to have to, be in this situation. So I think that's a really good point. But Ian, would you want to build on that?
Yeah, absolutely. The preparation is the key factor here. And if this is a big enough issue that you need to talk to someone like this, you're going to lay your heart and soul in preparing, and it's something really important to you. But once you follow the steps, that's why the steps are there in that order. It helps you move from one to the other, and you understand now the reason behind each step. Certainly helps you deliver it without the emotion. But it does take practice. So, I mean, we're all human, and the more practice you do, the better. As you have more and more of these conversations, then the emotion, you get better at it. The emotion goes out of it because you've actually planned well.
I'm seeing some conversation going on in the chat, and it's exactly what we'd hoped would happen, that people are asking questions. We can't get to them all, but other people are also commenting, and that's terrific. We're seeing that happening better today than before. Neil made a really good point too, that sometimes it's only our responsibility to actually have the conversation. We can't control what somebody's going to do afterwards. We can't control other people's behaviours or responses, but we have a responsibility to actually put it out on the table and at least let people address things. So thanks to Neil for that. Yes, Ed?
I just had a question, Ian, in terms of when you've had these conversations, how have your relationships with those people, how were they in the future? Sort of like, did you find that the strength of your relationship changed, I guess, without giving you the answer?
No, Ed, without embellishing, it's every time. And I felt better, because I think you connected a deeper level with somebody. And I talked about some of those egos of reporting people overseas, but that just helped me so much about developing. They're long life friends, some of them today. So because not everyone does this, not everyone goes there, and particularly as managers, it's easy to just use your authority or take advantage of the situation because you've got more power. But when you come and sit next to somebody rather than opposite somebody, people respect that.
How about when the power differential is reversed, where you've got a subordinate not necessarily happening with them, sort of not happy with a manager. Have you seen it happen in reverse?
Yes, because I have, and I'm just thinking of some examples now in my mind. I've certainly used it for people above me, but people have come in and sat down with me. And again, my appreciation of that, because it's been delivered. You know, some people, I had one particular staff member who was pretty fiery, and only after a few days, she gave me both barrels about something she wasn't happy with. And I asked her, I actually sent her out of the room and said, you've actually been trained in this conversation piece. Come back and respect me. And when she did, it was just beautifully delivered. So,
and I just wonder whether our kids, you know, in our households, absolutely, we've got parents and kids that, as families, maybe we can sit down before there's even an issue and discuss these steps as being a way to have conversations if they're needed. And maybe we need to check in once a day. Does anyone need to have a conversation? And then, you know, there's this freedom then that we have a strategy and a process to perhaps air the things that really matter to us. But if that's on an even playing field, I think that could be a really useful strategy at this time.
Yeah, permission's important, Ed. You do get that. But I know one person in my life this does not work with, and that's my wife. So some people it's just not going to work for, I can tell you.
I think it's a terrific thing for teachers and for parents with kids, but I'll tell you, and we're starting to run out of time, but one thing I've noticed that kids do really well, and I noticed this as a teacher, was if you went to address something, they'd often deflect it and say, but what about somebody else? And we can fall into the trap of getting onto that secondary issue and addressing the point that they've made rather than coming back and staying on track. So I just think it's a terrific strategy for us to have for every walk of life, isn't it, Ed and Ian?
Yeah, I think there's a really important point here. Being authentic in your willingness to resolve or help with a problem is critical. Yeah. And I think Tim made a point where he handwrote he took the time to write a note to somebody. And that's a really authentic way for people to feel valued because we're taking the time rather than just dismissing it and being prepared to just be that gossip at the water fountain, that we're taking the time because we value them enough to try and get some resolution.
Look, terrific. I'm going to start drawing it to an end. But I think that's really helpful today. And I think too what you say, Ed, sometimes we might be nervous about delivering it in person and nervous about our emotions coming out. But if we can write it down in a letter, getting back to my story at the start, my mum wrote that to me as a letter. And not only was it really powerful, but it was something that I could put away and pull out another time and reflect back on as well, that particular really important conversation in our lives. So as we start to head toward the Easter break, we go to the next slide. So here's the 7 points from today. What is the issue? Select a specific answer or two that illustrates the behaviour or situation you want to change. Describe your emotions around the issue. Clarify why resolving this issue is important. Identify your contribution. I think that's really important and shows that humility. Indicate your wish to resolve it. I don't just want this to go on and on. We want to come to an end. And invite the person to respond. So if you find this image on our Facebook page and you want to continue the conversation, today we've been talking about uploading some of the terrific feedback that we've had and putting that onto our Facebook site so that people can read what others have said as well as what we've had time to address. So the Facebook site's the place for that. And if you find that slide, again, we're running a poll on what you want to hear. We've got some terrific topics coming up. So we've got a break for Good Friday, a break for Easter Monday. The following Wednesday, we're going to be talking about having real connections during this time of social isolation. Then on the Friday, we've got another special guest coming on. Larice is going to talk about how we're kind to ourselves. And on the following Monday, I think it's the 20th, we've got Anthony Phillips coming in. He runs Phillips Coaching, and we've had a lot of footy clubs and other clubs say, what do we do with our kids when they can't train in their sport, when they can't see their friends? And Anthony's come up with a whole lot of fantastic activities that they can do, from yoga to juggling to having little competitions among themselves and filming each other, you know, taking speckies on the bed, or all sorts of things. And we reckon it's going to be fantastic for clubs to keep things going with the kids who can no longer participate. So tell us what else you want to hear about. That's your opportunity. If today has been difficult for you, that's the number for Lifeline. We put that up every single time. So join us next Wednesday for quality connections during social isolation. Thank you to our partners, Bendigo Bank, Eastland, FC Business Solutions. Remember, everybody, we come out of this time stronger, richer and better in the things that really matter. Continue to love each other, support each other, and stay positive and strong. Thanks, everybody.